Here's a question from Marsha and Rick and Sarah. Why is there a conflict among churches concerning the rapture? Is it even in the Bible? Why are there so many different interpretations of it? Well, good question, and one that since this latest movie on the rapture has come out, probably is being asked a little bit more often. First, let's define the word rapture for those who are unfamiliar with the term, and there will be plenty of those, because it's a doctrine that's not broadly taught in all of the church. It begins with a belief that Christ will return in two stages. In the first stage, the rapture is the belief that the Lord will beam up, in Star Trek terms, beam me up, Scotty. The Greek word is caught up. It's in 1 Thessalonians 4:17. The true believers of his church, either before the tribulation is a time of persecution of Christians in the future, or during it, or after it. But the concept has not been a mainstay of Christians historically. First of all, that word caught up in the Greek doesn't mean to be abducted. It means to be suddenly and passionately understanding of God and responsive to God. So kind of caught up in the moment. So it is more of an accurate thing. So that's why the word rapture was not really historically a mainstay of Christian theology or biblical interpretation. In fact, the word rapture is not even found in the King James Version, the only English version we had until 1611, or published in 1611 until recently. The rapture is not mentioned in any of the early Christian writings of which we have knowledge until after the year 1830. Let me tell you what happened in 1830. There was a 15-year-old girl in Scotland, I believe it was, who relapsed and had a vision, and began what back then was basically a charismatic movement. It went good and bad. Got her kicked out of the Presbyterian Church, but it really spread. Later, it became popularized by John Darby and by Scofield of the Scofield Bibles. That's why many of your Bibles will have in the notes about the rapture, because Scofield did a lot of really good research, but he really had this thing about the rapture and tribulation and so on and so forth. Then by Hal Lindsey in the 70s and by the authors of the Left Behind series more recently. The deal is this: it makes for great drama, makes for wonderful movies, but it's really poor exegesis. Exegesis, by the way, is excavating from the Bible, what the Bible really says, and hermeneutics, biblical interpretation. So here's my advice: don't really set your theology on that doctrine, and don't even worry about it. Hebrews 12 chapter verses 1 and 2 says this: let us run the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. Don't worry about people who are going to be abducted from their cars or wherever, and those who left behind. Don't get in your brain that our God is a God who exempts Christians from tribulations, because frankly, the whole biblical narrative is that we live through tribulations the same as everybody else. Get in your brain a God who so loves us, he will guide us through those tribulations to himself.